there. And we want to listen in now because Athletic Director Danny White is speaking about that big move.
In a judicious way. The players are our number one priority right now. We'll be visiting with them later today. As I always do, embarking on a search. I'll be letting them know I've asked Frank Anderson to serve as our interim head coach. The terminology I used with Frank is I need a shepherd right now. I need a day-to-day leader. And his response was, not that long ago, I was one of the most fiery baseball coaches in the country, and you're asking me to be a shepherd. I said, Coach, that's exactly what I'm asking you to do. I'm asking Josh Elander to be a candidate, and we are going to conduct a national search and expect a ton of interest because of what Tony and his staff and our fan base and everyone has built here. I think it's an extremely attractive position. Obviously, a little bit unique time of year. I'm going to work as fast as I can and get through this process and eliminate the uncertainty that our players are feeling right now as quickly as possible. We have a lot of talent here and expect to have an extremely competitive baseball team this spring. That's, I think, what I wanted to address today. Jason, I leave anything out in terms of logistics? Meet with the team later today, as I always do. I'll ask for them to vote on a leadership group. I'll meet with that group more in depth tomorrow. I want them to have a voice in this process, and we'll get started on our search as quickly as we possibly can. So with that, I'll open up to any questions. I know there's a lot out there. This has been a unique process in terms of how public it's been. There's been a whole lot of rumor mill going on, so I want y'all to ask me anything you want. I think you'll enjoy maybe some facts. Go ahead.
We'll start here on the right versus Brent and then Mike. Danny, you characterize, or can you characterize the relationship you've had with Tony since you've been here, and what has the last 5 days been like from a communication standpoint with him as he went through this decision and you guys went through, kind of where he was with it?
Yeah, I mean, no different than any of our coaches. I think I have a great relationship with Tony. I don't work as closely with him as our sport administrator does. In this case, it's Tyler Johnson for the majority of his time here. But we do that. That's kind of how we're structured. But I do appreciate, obviously, what Tony built for our baseball program. But also, we also saw how invested he was to our athletic department and showing up at games and supporting our teams. And in terms of more recently, he's been proactive. I mean, this thing goes back a few weeks, and he's been good about, and I appreciate how he's been proactive and keep me in the loop and informing me every step of the way.
Danny, there's been a lot of rumors about NIL allocations and baseball funds going toward women's basketball, things of that nature. Do you have any comment on that, and how have you approached the rev share and NIL across the athletics department?
Yeah, sure. First, I think we'd all should, anybody that's participated, where did that rumor come from? Did anybody report that in here?
Not in here.
So who reported it? Like, somebody had to make up something that's not true for it to become a rumor, right? So I think we should all collectively apologize to Kim Caldwell and our women's basketball program, because that's factually incorrect. Never happened. Our rev share numbers are consistent with the House settlement. 5% for women's basketball, 15% for men's basketball, 75% for football, 5% for other. We, with that other bucket, which is $900,000, we distributed $750,000 to our baseball program. That is far from what we do for baseball or for any sport. Like all the most competitive programs in the country, we participated in front loading last spring. Baseball was a beneficiary of that. We are supporting baseball, I think at a higher level than anybody in America. We are full scholarships in baseball, all 34 spots. We were one of the first schools to sprint to that. I think we're the only school in the country that's also doing cost of attendance on top of that. That was about a $1.2 million new investment this year that a sport like women's basketball wouldn't have gotten. And we do more with rev share and with NIL packages for baseball on top of their rev share. So I know what the competitive space is in the SEC and across the country. I know our baseball program is extremely well equipped. Otherwise, we wouldn't be recruiting at the level we are.
Go to the left there.
Danny, two questions. In terms of the interim, why the move with Frank now instead of maybe Josh, who would step in when Tony was not present? And secondly, do you have a timeline? I know you said as soon as possible. Do you have a timeline for when you want this whole thing wrapped up, obviously over the course of the next couple of weeks?
Yeah, a combination of factors. Frank's obviously been a head coach, but probably more importantly, as quickly as I'd like to move, I'd like Josh to be able to focus on his candidacy. And he's kind of in the middle of all this too. Up until this morning, the entire staff didn't know the decision that Tony was going to make. So he's been focused on recruiting and coaching his players. We have an incoming class. There's a lot going on. And I didn't want to throw this on him now while also maybe treating an interview as an afterthought. I want to be able to focus on the interview process.
Communication with Josh or Frank before this morning, and what is your relationship with Josh like?
I don't make common practice of becoming chummy with our assistant coaches. I think that there's a chain of command that would be inappropriate to have social relationships with them. But for the first time last night, I visited with each of them individually and talked about this plan. At that point in time, it was a contingency plan. We didn't know the decision that Tony was going to make. But have had a chance again to visit with him more today and look forward to doing that more as we embark on the search process.
There's been some talk too about roster size in this sport, what it can be in the spring, what some teams are right now. There's numbers 45, 44, 39, 34. What is the roster number, and where does Tennessee's roster number compare to its competitors at this point?
Our roster numbers have all changed with the House settlement post July 1, and they're consistent with our scholarship numbers now, which is a great thing for a sport like baseball. We used to be capped at 11.7 scholarships, and now there is no cap. So we have 34 roster spots and 34 full scholarships. With the first year and the designated student athlete opportunities, there's a chance to be somewhat flexible, but once we get out of the period with DSAs, there's going to be zero flexibility. So all of our coaches for all 20 sports were informed of what the roster numbers are over a year ago. And the expectation for all of our head coaches is to meet your roster spots, a part of the job. We have to be compliant with the House settlement, and we also have Title IX considerations. We have to balance our number of participants on rosters with men versus women across all of our sports. It has to be consistent with the student body across the campus, and then also the scholarship allocation from a grant and aid perspective. So there's roster numbers are important for every sport, but I think they're an easy thing to manage. We just need our coaches to hit their numbers.
You kind of referenced the time of year that this is taking place. How unorthodox is it to conduct a baseball coaching search in October? And then you also said this is a top 3 job. Does that make it easier, even despite it being maybe a different time of year?
We're going to find out. I'm going into this with open eyes. Like I've said to you guys before, and relative to coaching searches, interviews matter. I won't ultimately know what the right decision is till I go through that process and get an opportunity to compare candidates against each other and to hear from our student athletes, all that stuff. But I expect that even though it's a difficult time of year, I expect that there's going to be a ton of interest because of what Tony's built here, what we've all collectively built here, our players, our fans, our donors, everybody contributing to that awesome new facility that will open up this season.
Kind of on that note, and you touched on it a little bit, is there anything specific you're looking for in this coaching hire? Maybe recruiting, maybe hitting up, pitching. Is there anything specific in terms of what your ideal candidate is, age, experience, anything like that?
Nothing specific. The first data point for me will be hearing more directly from that leadership group of the student athletes, what they're experiencing right now. A lot of times when you go into a coaching search, it's because there's the team isn't having the kind of success you want to have, so how do we make things better? But we're obviously 18 months removed from a national championship and just lost our coach to the big leagues for the first time in the history of college baseball. So we have a positive momentum and a good thing going, but I still want to hear their perspective and learn from that and then go into the process. But I don't have anything in particular in mind.
Maybe building off of that, you jokingly mentioned to Frank Anderson you're running a shepherd for the program. Is that also something that is a high priority for you and the next head coach?
Not necessarily. I think I use that term because, like, right now, the kids need to know who's the head coach. They need that. There's got to be somebody in charge. So in any kind of coaching transition, I'm always, like, immediately we have to have an interim coach. That interim coach might be in that role for 4 days. It might be a lot longer than that. I don't know. But there's got to be, you got to fill that void. So that's where the term shepherd came from in my mind.
In your conversations with the players, what are you going to try to do to incentivize them to stay here at Tennessee rather than entering the transfer portal and going elsewhere?
I always, in every single transition, encourage the players not to let their emotions get the best of them, focus on their academics, focus on baseball right now. I'll be telling them some of the things I've told you. I'm going to work as fast as I can to try to eliminate that uncertainty for them as quickly as I can. And then I'll be asking them to give the new head coach and coaching staff, however that plays out. In this case, it might be something that's very familiar for them. It might be something that's different. I don't know. But ask them to assess what that looks like, really for their own best interests. They have a tremendous opportunity here at Tennessee, and like every student athlete we have here, if they choose to do something different, then that's their decision.
Any other questions? Will there be a search firm used in this? Is there anybody that you lean on, a former player who's in the sport, or has, to help you gain some further background on potential candidates out there? What resources do you use in this search besides yourself?
I'm using Parker Executive Search, who I've used for several coaching searches here. And they are already working on a plan on the logistics. I use them to help set up interviews. That they don't pick who we interview. I do that. I've been assessing. I'm always assessing the market for all of our sports, but I've been assessing, knowing this was a possibility for a while. What was your second question? Baseball. Yeah, I think in every search, I try to lean on people I trust in the sport that know more about it than I do. And I'll be looking for opportunities to do that here, too.
Two-parter for you. First, what is your message to Vol Nation? Obviously, they are not happy that their national championship head coach is leaving for the big leagues. And then the second part of that, I know you've mentioned Frank, you've mentioned Josh as well. Do you expect Tony to take any of his staff with him, or what does that kind of look like?
I don't know. Tony and I haven't talked about that. We spoke earlier today. I'm not sure that he knows. He's probably trying to figure things out himself. I would venture to guess he probably doesn't know yet. So I think I visited with our entire staff earlier today and told them that we have every intention of making sure that they're in a good place and that they need to do what's best for their career. I get that, whether that's in San Francisco or here or somewhere else. But we're not going to leave anybody out in the cold. This is a staff that's done a lot for this university, and we'll make sure that they're in a good place.
And fans?
What was your question about the fans?
Just like, obviously they're not happy if their national championship coach has left. So what is your message to them moving forward?
I don't know that any of us, but he's happy that Tony Vitello is not our coach anymore. We won a national championship and won a historic amount of games. But I also think that we should be happy for him. This is a decision that he made that is a pretty phenomenal accomplishment. So I go back to what I said at the beginning. I don't think this is a sad day. I think this is a proud day. It's a compliment to our program and what's been accomplished here, and it's certainly mostly a compliment to Tony.
Just going off everything you've said, you intend to have a head coach in place then for the 26th season, and there's not a plan to have Frank operate as interim through that whole season, correct?
I'm not putting myself in a box with anything right now. This is kind of unprecedented to have a coaching transition this time of year. So I don't know how this plays out.
Anything else question-wise? Danny, thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, guys.
Well, you were listening in just now to UT Athletics Director Danny White talking about this big move, Tony Vitello going to the big leagues. Emily Ray Cochran joining me now to talk more about this. You just heard Danny White say this should not be a sad day. This should be a proud day.
Yeah, I mean, Brittany, if I'm a Tennessee fan, obviously, because of the person Tony Vitello is, it has to be some kind of sad day. He is, one of the most charismatic coaches I've ever covered. I think that's what makes this whole thing as sad as it is, But, from an outside bubble, from outside of Tennessee's reality, you have to take a step back and be like, this has never been done in MLB history before. And my former head coach was able to do it. That should say something about who Tony is as a person, as a coach. And you got to walk away and be like, all right, he gets his flowers and he is set to progress in his career.
And speaking of that, you kind of made reference that a lot of his former players are now coming out and wishing him goodwill. So there's not a lot of people saying, oh, how dare he go?
No, I don't think if Tony Vitello ever comes back to Tennessee, he'll be booed. I mean, maybe you might get some, but at the end of the day, he won you a national championship. He built this program and turned it into what it is today. And he is leaving behind essentially a gold mine. You look at his recruiting class, you look at, the staff that he's been able to build, who it looks like from what Danny White said, could be sticking around to some capacity. Again, Frank Anderson going in as interim. But then you have the possibility of Josh Elander potentially applying for that job. And you get into that situation and, you could be very likely keeping a lot of those players on the team currently.
And let's talk about that. As you mentioned, Frank Anderson is going to be the interim, and you heard Danny White say he's not going to put himself in a box and say how long that's going to be, because this is sort of, as he mentioned, an unprecedented time of the year to have a coaching change like this. But he also said at the same time he wants Frank Anderson to be a shepherd for the program in the meantime, and Josh Elander to be encouraged to apply for the position. And lots of players are coming out and throwing their support behind him.
Absolutely. You're looking at former national champions, Christian Moore, Blake Burke. I think Drew Beam came out and also said, if it's not Elander, then we don't know what you guys are doing. Essentially because you think he's been with Tony the entire time he's been at Tennessee. If Tony's not recruiting, it's Josh Elander recruiting. He's essentially Tony's right-hand man. He's brought in some of the most talented players that UT has had in recent years, continued to build those relationships. I would say the difference between the two is Tony's definitely more open about, his personality and things like that. We haven't really gotten to see Josh be super open about who he is. I'm sure behind closed doors he's very similar. But it'll be interesting to see, if he does take on this role, how we'll see him step into things and turn this program into, try to continue something that Tony has built for 8 years.
And speaking of continuing, a lot of the players, of course, Tennessee is going to want to keep, and that was one of the questions asked as well. How do you think it looks when it comes to players wanting to transfer and their ability to do so?
So I did want to mention this. It's interesting because, like everybody's saying, the transfer portal is open for 30 days for Tennessee players. But the only guaranteed players who can still play Division I baseball anywhere else outside of Tennessee in the 2026 season is graduate players. So if you're not a graduate player and you're an underclassman, then you have to stay at Tennessee if you want to play Division I baseball. If you want to not be at Tennessee anymore, then you have the option to go to JUCO or a D2 school. So that's definitely important to consider. I believe they have one graduate student on the team currently. So again, it just only makes sense to put Elander in that position so you can keep the talent on your roster, keep the staff around you, and kind of just not pick up where you left off, because Tony, it's going to be a massive loss regardless for the fan base, for everybody involved. But I think this would be the most seamless transition if Tennessee wants to keep things relatively the same.
Of course, we've been hearing about this news buzzing for several days now, but Danny White mentioned that it was just this morning when you really heard the official news from Tony. Does that surprise you?
I mean, this has been it seems like it has been a back and forth situation for the past few days. Now, obviously, on game day for Tennessee football, we heard the news come out on social media saying that this could be a possibility. On Monday, speculation, but then you also see Tony going to the scrimmages, throwing out baseballs, things like that, just being who he is. And I think it did make things kind of confusing. But at the same time, you have to imagine this is an ongoing discussion between both parties and a lot of back and forth going on. This is also a decision that Tony, I'm assuming, is not taking lightly.
Right.
I believe that it could have very well been 50-50 for a lot of the time that there was back and forth. But you're walking away from a Tennessee program that you've built up, you've won them a national championship, you could probably be so happy here for the rest of your life, but then there's another part where it's like, okay, this is the unknown. If I don't take this incredible opportunity, I'm going to be thinking in the back of my mind, what if I never took this opportunity and tried to progress in my career? And at the same time, you got to think, if he does take it, he doesn't like it, he could always, come back to college baseball. But this is a once in a lifetime opportunity, clearly, because it's literally never been done in MLB history.
And I mean, I don't know how you say no to that. Really quickly, before we want to check in with Camille Gear, let's talk about the potential pay, because we're hearing reports that the previous manager made about $4 million. Tony Vitello made $3 million. So one would guess if he's going to make this jump, he's probably going to get more money.
I would assume so. You also think about the living expenses in California as opposed to Tennessee, higher cost of living. There are reports out there that obviously the former manager did make $4 million. I would assume Tony would make, this is me assuming, maybe 6 to 8 a year is what we've kind of also been seeing. Again, that is not out yet, but I would assume that he is making a few million more than what he has made at Tennessee.
All right, big news again today on Rocky Top. So let's check in now with 10 Sports anchor Camille Gear, who was listening in to that Danny White press conference and steps outside with the very latest. Camille.
Yeah, hey, Brittany. So like you just said, we just wrapped up with athletic director Danny White, and he started off his press conference by saying, quote, "It's not a sad day, but a proud day." He, of course, thanked Tony Vitello for his 8 seasons here on Rocky Top, but really went on to say that this is an unprecedented situation. And Danny made a great point. Usually when a team is searching for a head coach, it's because they're not doing so hot. But that is the exact opposite situation that Tennessee is in right now. Obviously, the Vols are just 18 months removed from a national championship, and you just had their head coach go to the show for the first time in the history of college baseball. So it will be interesting to see where the Vols go from here. But it is important to note that Danny then did go on to talk about how Frank Anderson will be the interim head coach for now. Now, he did emphasize that he still wants Josh Elander to be a candidate for the position. So that will be we'll keep an eye on that as well. I'm going to look at my notes here and just talk a little bit about more what he talked about. Now, the rumor mill has been swirling this last couple weeks about NIL share when it comes to revenue, and he did put those rumors to bay. Danny did go on to say that when you look at the NIL funding for the University of Tennessee, that 5% goes to women's basketball, 15% goes to men's basketball, 75% goes to football, and then 5% goes to other sports, which of course is what baseball would fall under. So now the Tennessee baseball program, he said, does get about $750,000 of NIL money. So he did want to make sure that that rumor is put to bed. And he did say that everyone owes an apology to Kim Caldwell in her women's basketball program. Now, he also went on to say again that when it comes to the coaching search, he's not really sure what he's looking for because obviously this is all unfolded over the last couple weeks. But he did say it's really important for him to have the student athletes have a decision in this. So he will be making sure that there is a leadership group in place, and he will want their opinion as this coaching search moves forward. Now, he also went on to say that there really is no timeline. So for now, we're just going to have to figure out what Danny is going to do. So guys, I'll send things back to you.
All right, Camille, thank you so much. Wes Rucker joining us now to talk more about this. Big news today and sort of what's next. This comes at not the best time of year heading into baseball season.
You're right. I mean, it's certainly not the best time of year. You know, you could argue there's never a good time to lose a head coach like Tony Vitello. I think that'd be a pretty good argument to make. But I think it's an interesting time because the difference in the two sports, you know, normally with college football and NFL football, college basketball, there's not this much of a lag in between the difference in the seasons, right? And so it's rare that a college coach really, it's never happened when a college coach goes directly to Major League Baseball, but the seasons end 3 or 4 months apart. So this is when Major League teams are hiring, and that's, you can't get away from that. So it's an unusual circumstance, but I would argue that with Tennessee's roster in place, if you keep 80-90% of that roster in place and you keep some of those commitments, because their 2027 recruiting class is one of the best that a lot of us have ever seen in terms of, you know, just how talented. I mean, I think all of them are top 100 prospects nationally. It's a little bit silly. So if you keep some of that together and you have that new ballpark, you know, I guess not really a new park, but it is a new park, basically, certainly. And so I think you have a lot to offer there as well. So, you know, Danny White said top 3 job. I think that's debatable. It's certainly a top 5, top 10 caliber job right now, no doubt about that. And if you get this hire right, then Tennessee stays right where it has been. And I think the issue is for Tennessee, you can get maybe someone who wins as much as Tony Vitello. You can maybe get someone who has the same kind of personality as Tony Vitello. I don't think that you can get both of those things. I don't know that there's another recipe quite like that one out there. So that's the challenge now, is you got to find the closest thing that's the next best thing for your program.
And is that perhaps Josh Elander? People are talking about him. Players are saying we want him. And Emily and I were talking earlier about the fact that he's often out on those recruiting trips. So when it comes to keeping those recruits, would they be interested in staying because of him?
100%, yes. There's no question about that. And I don't like to be in the business of making many 100% calls, because that's, I guess you could ask Todd and the gang, right? I mean, you can look wrong when you do that. But I think that he has recruited that roster every bit as much as Tony Vitello has recruited that roster. He has the relationships in place with those families that Tony Vitello has. They're very different personalities, but they also think alike in baseball in that they want the same kinds of players. They want a program to be run the same kind of way. So it's a little bit different window dressing, but it's the same stuff in the store. And I think if you're Tennessee, there's a reason why all these players want it to be Josh Elander. This is a guy who has been loyal to Tennessee. He has turned down opportunities to be a head coach elsewhere to stay at Tennessee. And I think you have to be a little bit sensitive to the fact that this is the University of Tennessee, and everyone remembers the Holly Warlick era, right? And how that was supposedly the one that just you couldn't miss, right? And it missed, and it is what it is. So there is no automatic, easy button here. There's no way to know what you're getting, but I think no one's going to bat an eye if you hire Josh Elander. There's two ways you can go about it, right? The popular hire gets you really popular in the short term, but you're judged on the long-term success of the hire. So getting the right hire is more important than getting the popular hire, but it's certainly a time where Tennessee could use both.
Well, let's talk a little bit about Tony Vitello going to the big leagues. We know that when it comes to college sports and major league sports, sometimes the transition either way doesn't really work. How are we thinking he's going to do?
I don't think there's a bigger jump between college and pros in any sport more so than baseball. You're talking about fundamentally different jobs. I mean, you start with the fact that he will not be the biggest earner in his own clubhouse, right? You have to you have to coach players who a lot of them will make more money than you do, and that's just how it goes. But also, you're talking about managing it. You're not managing one team. You're managing an organization in a lot of ways. And you'll have a general manager, you'll have scouts, you'll have baseball ops people, executives. But at the end of the day, you're also making decisions on who do you call up from the minors, right? How do you manage guys over 162 games? How do you get a guy a day off here or there? If you have a really popular, high-earning player and you got to put him on the bench because it's best for the team, in college you can do that all day long because it's almost a dictatorship, right? You're running the thing, and there's no one to question you really, except for I guess the fans. It's a lot different at that next level. And so it's a completely different mindset in that you're managing a program versus an organization of 100 plus players, and it is a lot different. And Tony Vitello, let's not forget this, he was also not a professional baseball player.
Oh, right,
So
right.
he has not, this is completely jumping into the deep end for him. And that's why it's never been done before because, you know, it's funny because you think about San Francisco, Silicon Valley, disruption, kind of what they're known for. So this fits in that way, but it's very, very different what he's about to go do. And a lot of people think he can do it. I think he has a chance to do it, but he's absolutely going to make mistakes because anyone would.
I mean, I can't imagine the pressure is on for him big time now.
Oh, there's no question. I mean, it's the San Francisco Giants. It's one thing when you say, hey, it's not the Marlins, it's not the Rockies, it's not the Pirates. You're talking about the San Francisco Giants. I think only 4 organizations in history have won more World Series than the San Francisco Giants. It's a big market. It's probably, I've been to 20, 22 Major League ballparks. It's the prettiest one that I've ever seen.
Yeah.
You cannot beat, chef's kiss to that background. It is fantastic there in the Bay, and it's a great baseball city, great place to be. Those are all the perks, but you can't have all those perks without the pressure that comes with them. And at the end of the day, you're managing in the same division as the Los Angeles Dodgers, who are spending money like it doesn't exist. And so you have to go in there against the most expensive organization in baseball history and go compete with them as your biggest rival all the time. That's what Tennessee got with Tony Vitello because he came in as the scrappy underdog and batted away at the SEC. But doing this against the Los Angeles Dodgers, that's even more difficult. So we'll see how he does. But that makes him who he is, wanting that challenge.
Whole new ball game, as they say, Wes.
Yes.
All right. Thank you so much for your insight. We're going to take a quick pause and transition to 10 About Town. Stay with us.